Good morning and welcome to a new week, the one that draws us closer to the end of the month of August. You're welcome to Business Morning on Channels Television. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
And I'm Ladi Williams. Thank you for joining us. Let's see what's happening in the oil market. Now, oil prices are reverse gains today, pulling back from more than a 3-week high reached earlier in this session as a powerful hurricane slammed into the U.S. Gulf Coast, forcing shutdowns and evacuations of hundreds of offshore oil platforms. Brent was up 16 cents to $72.86 a barrel. Rose more than 11% last week in the anticipation of disruptions to oil production from Ida. U.S. oil turned negative and was down by 4 cents at $68.70 a barrel, having jumped a little over 10% over the last week. Benchmarks hit highs not seen since early August. That's $73.69 and $69.64 respectively. Earlier in the session, as Ida slammed ashore near Port Fortune, Louisiana, hub of the Gulf's offshore energy industry.
All right, back here in Nigeria, the Nigerian banking industry lost 482 billion naira in the financial year ended December 31st, 2020. And that's according to Augusto & Co. Banking Industry Report. And this was due to sterile cash reserve funds held by the central bank. Meanwhile, cash reserve fund held by the CBN grew by 64.3% year-on-year, while heightened currency risk concerns led to a 5.2% decline in the banking industry. 15% of banking industry's non-interest income was generated from electronic banking transactions, while investment and FX revaluation gains accounted for 58% of non-interest income in the year ended 31st of December 2020. Non-performing loans declined by 4% and long-term debt securities amounted to 248 billion naira in the full year 2020 and the first quarter of this year. Well, we have Andrew Nevin, the chief economist at PwC Nigeria, joining us to explain the implication of this report. Good to have you, Andrew. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so in summary, what does this report say about the Nigeria's banking industry?
Well, I mean, I think from our perspective, the banking industry is actually in very good shape. And I think what Augusto & Co. has said is accurate, but we need to put it in some context. So if you take the cash reserve ratio for a minute, why is there a high cash reserve ratio? I think it's 27.5% of the bank assets. The reason for that is so that we have a stable and sound financial system. So depositors have no risk of losing their money. I mean, I can still remember bank failures back in 2009, Oceanic, Intercontinental, for example. And it was really up to His Royal Highness Mohammed Sanusi II when he was central bank governor to make the heroic efforts to make sure that no depositor lost money. But these rules were brought in to make sure that our system has a real stability. With respect to the decline in the lending in foreign currency, I mean, you can only lend in foreign currency to a company that has a income stream in foreign currency. That's a basic rule of banking. It reflects the decline, the fact that we're not exporting enough. We don't have enough industries exporting things and earning US dollars or euros. It doesn't have really anything to do with the banking system. The banking system is doing what it should on that. With respect to the payment income, 15% of their non-interest income being from the electronic banking. I mean, I think banks should expect that number is going to continue to decline. I mean, we do billions of transactions in this country. I mean, the NIB system is absolutely amazing. The BVN is amazing. And this is all done at a very low cost, right? I mean, so it sounds like a lot of the income, but it's not a very big amount per transaction. And that number is going to zero. I'm sure people have all heard about the central bank digital currency, which is a major innovation. Again, Nigeria out in front. And that's just going to drive those transaction costs even lower for the public and particularly for the bottom of the pyramid. So I think that the banking system is in great shape and we shouldn't be worried about the banking system.
Okay, but losing 482 billion naira income to sterile cash reserve funds, should this be a concern?
Well, it's a trade-off. I mean, you can decide you can lower the cash reserve ratio, which means the bank can then lend more. But of course, then the bank is closer to perhaps going in adverse circumstances to insolvency. So if you go back to 2009, for example, when I was here in early 2009, We made a number of visits, including the Honorable Minister of Finance, for example, and we said there's going to be a financial crisis. There's a financial crisis happening all over the West. It's going to come to Nigeria. People didn't believe us. By June, that had arrived, and the governor had taken over 9 banks and resolved them on that. So if you decrease the ratio, there may be more lending. But the fundamental issue from our viewpoint is, if you look across the financial services sector, so insurance, investment banking, capital markets, asset management, banking, core banking is doing fantastically well. The problem is that the other sectors are not. So I don't think we should be concerned about the banking sector. The CBN is a very effective regulator, very high-skilled organization. What we need is the insurance sector much bigger. We need certainly the capital markets. Really, we've been saying for a number of years is the core. And of course, one of our most famous bankers, Mr. Modway, has come out and said, very clearly, we need a capital markets that's 10 times bigger on that. So our problem in terms of the economy is not the banking system. People ask the banking system to do things it shouldn't be doing. Long-term capital, venture capital, for example. Those things need to be done elsewhere. And we need the SEC, NICOM to be supported by the federal government, and we need to create those sectors to be as big as the banking industry. If we look at South Africa, for example, I believe the insurance industry is bigger than the banking industry, while here it's, I think, the ratio of 50 or 100 to 1.
All right. Thank you so much, Nevin, for sharing your thoughts with us on the report on the banking industry. And we'll surely reach out to you for more of your thoughts on issues. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll take a break now. When we come back, well, recently the central bank threatened to sanction microfinance banks. Yes, we're still talking about banks, this time the microfinance banks, for going beyond their mandate. What does this mean? What are some of those sanctions that they could get? We'll discuss that after the break. Do stay with us. It's Business Morning on Channels Television.
Next to our next conversation now, microfinance banks are licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria to carry on the business of providing financial services such as savings and deposits, loans, domestic funds transfer, and non-financial services to microfinance clients. So recently, the Central Bank threatened to sanction microfinance banks going beyond the mandate of their operating license to engage in foreign exchange transactions. Fear of the consequences on the low-income earners served by the 880 microfinance have sparked conversations. One, which we'll follow up this morning with Michael Ogunremi, macroeconomist and a fixed income analyst. Great to have you, Michael. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so the CBN is accusing, some microfinance banks of engaging in wholesale banking, foreign exchange transactions, and others. What does this mean?
So when you look at it, I think it all boils down to what the mandate of microfinance bank is, right? The reason why microfinance bank, was set up is basically to cater to the micro segment of the market. So what the CBN notices is the fact that a lot of these banks are beginning to play out of their scope, right? So you have them participating in wholesale banking, and that's in terms of the size of the loans that they're giving. You also have them participating, in the FX market, probably selling to, some clients and probably buying from some clients. And that way, making it two-way arbitrage. And because of the fact that, the CBN is trying to achieve some sort of convergence in the FX markets, what is happening, what microfinance banks, are currently doing is sort of counterproductive, to their aim. So I think that's the whole genesis of the CBN coming out to say that you guys are playing out of your scope, and what you're currently doing is counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve. It's also important to cite that because of the capital requirements of microfinance bank, which is between 200 million and 5 billion, depending on what class of microfinance bank it is, right? It speaks to the CBN that if you are participating in wholesale banking, you don't have the capital base to do that. And so if you're doing it, it simply means that you're threatening your own existence. And because, you recall that, we just came out of a whole set of banking crisis, and the CBN is trying to ensure that the banking system is in sanity. So I think that's the whole idea behind CBN coming out to say that you guys should put a pause on participating in wholesale banking and FX transaction.
So this threat of sanctions, what are the likely sanctions that the CBN could hand down to the microfinance banks?
Okay, to be very honest, the CBN has a lot. When it comes to sanctions, I think the CBN has quite a whole lot of arsenals to put out sanctions to microfinance bank. One of it could be they could prohibit a particular bank from participating in lending, maybe for a while. It's also possible that they also prevent them from participating in certain activities that were initially in their mandates with the CBN. I mean, so safe to say the CBN has quite a plethora of tools to punish, if that's the word, right? To punish a microfinance bank if they err out of what they're supposed to do.
All right, so there are about 880 licensed microfinance banks in the country with a 1 million naira peg to their maximum loan limit per transaction. What is the impact to microfinance banks, with this sanction?
Okay, so let me start with this. The recent Q1 report that was released by the CBN shows that loan loss provisioning by microfinance bank has surged by 520% from March 2020 to March 2021. It's currently at 233 billion. What that speaks to is the fact that a lot of microfinance are high risk. They've given out a lot of high risk loan, and there's a high chance of the level of the probability of default on those loans are quite high, and that's why you have the loan provisioning for those loans also paint high as well. Now, to speak to what the impact of the directive is from the CBN, it's simply the CBN coming out to say that we're trying to make sure that everyone is playing within the limits of what you're supposed to do. So there's a banking architecture in place, right? There's the CBN at the FX. Then you have the different commercial banks with different regulatory approvals. And then you have some other banks, and then you have the microfinance bank, which is supposed to cater to the grassroots. Grassroots is supposed to cater for grassroots demand for financial services, right? So in terms of the impact, I think number one, it's probably not so good for business, because I mean, as a business owner, you want to make profits. It's probably not so good for owners of microfinance bank, but I think it's good for the entire banking system architecture to make sure that everyone is playing within the scope that they're expected to play in. Yeah, so I think those would be the major impacts, of the directive from the CBN.
But generally speaking, now when we talk about microfinance bank, what space do they occupy? How impactful are they in the economy? Can we do without them?
In an ideal economy, you can't do without a microfinance bank. So above the microfinance bank, you have commercial banks. I like to put it this way. There's a wholesale market, there's a retail market, and then there's a micro market, right? So within the wholesale and the retail market, you have commercial bank, dominating that space. But when it comes to the micro markets would be the people you have at the extreme rural areas, of the country, up north, down south, right? So you ask yourself the question, who would be the financial service company to cater to those people? And considering the fact that, the government is bent on ensuring that we have a high rate of financial inclusion, it becomes imperative, to have this microfinance bank provide them these services to make sure that we are able to achieve the level of financial inclusion we're trying to achieve. So is it possible to do without microfinance bank? I honestly don't think so, because if we don't have, a microfinance banking system, what it means is we're excluding certain part of the population from financial services, which is detrimental to what we're trying to achieve.
All right. Some of the challenges microfinance banks face here, regular changes in government policy, the lack of requisite human capital. Is there any way to give them, some succor in these areas?
So I think the first thing, let me start with the part of regulation. To be very honest, and let me state it clearly, you can have a very strong banking system without having, strong regulation from the CBN. So I wouldn't say that what the CBN is doing is wrong. I think what the CBN is doing is right. It's important to have strong financial regulation because, number one, you need to protect depositors' funds. Number two, you need to protect shareholders' capital. And considering the fact that Nigeria sort of, the dynamics of this economy is such that we have some support from, foreign portfolio investors. If we are going to continue to have that, it is important to ensure that every investment, that they are putting their money in is secure, especially in the financial service space. What I would just basically say in terms of giving succor to Microfinance Bank would be to ensure that, number one, board members and management of microfinance banks should always ensure that when they're coming up with internal policies, these policies should align with what the CBN is saying. Okay, because sometimes what you have is you have this distortion between what the internal policy of microfinance banks are and then what the CBN is trying to achieve, and that's why you see that, for instance, you can have a microfinance bank saying, okay, let's go ahead and give loans, above maybe 1 million per transaction, or let's say, give loans above 500,000 per transaction, depending on what class of microfinance bank it is. And that is, that counts as what the CBN has expressly told them to do. So in creating internal policies for microfinance bank, the people that are saddled with that responsibility should make sure that they have some sort of convergence with what the CBN is trying to achieve. It's also important to beef up capacity, in most of this microfinance bank, because to be very honest, there's a wide gap between, the performance of, the commercial banks, the deposit money banks, and then the microfinance bank. And while it is attributable to the fact that they have different, domains to play in and different scope, that they're supposed to operate in, it's important to also state that if, they can improve their own capacity through things like training and development, upskilling of their staffs, leveraging on technology, it's very, very likely that their performance, can sort of spiral upwards. I also think it's important for them, to have strong CBN support, because what I've seen, in my opinion, is, the CBN strongly supports, commercial bank. They do support microfinance bank, but I think, there has to be more support from them. Things like intervention, regular diagnosis of these banks to be sure which ones are currently, high risk. It's important for the CBN, to keep more tracks on these banks and also support them, with interventions to, to keep them afloat. So those would be my own recommendations.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for sharing your thoughts with us. And we certainly hope, as you've said, that the CBN will give more attention to the microfinance banks, especially because they are a major component in achieving financial inclusion in the country. Thank you so much, Michael Guremi, economist with Chapel Hill, Denham. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So we'll take a break now. When we come back, what is credit reporting? We'll talk about that after the break. Join us then. Yeah, welcome back. Well, a credit report is a statement that has information about your credit activity and current credit situation, such as loan paying history and the status of your credit account. Lenders use this report to help them decide if they will allow people take money, what interest rate they could offer. And the association leading this is the Credit Bureau Association of Nigeria. Well, we have the chairman, Dr. Tunde Popola, joining us now to tell us more about credit reporting. Good morning, Mr. Popola. Good to have you.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Nice to be here.
Great. So first of all, let's assess the credit reporting culture of Nigeria or Nigerians from your activities, from your eyes. How popular or unpopular is credit reporting?
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's good to start by saying that credit reporting is all about making credible information available to lenders in Nigeria so that they can have the opportunity to lend with very good information without lending in the dark. Part of the challenges we have had in the past as a nation, and this is the reason why credit penetration had been low in Nigeria, had been that there were no credit bureaus in Nigeria. There was no credit reporting system. So with the advent of credit bureaus licensed by the Central Bank in Nigeria in 2009, 3 licensed credit bureaus evolved, CRC Credit Bureau, First Central Credit Bureau and Credit Registry, Credit Bureau's services. So those have changed the landscape of availability of information to lenders in Nigeria. And I'm happy to report that since 2009, the Nigeria financial system has been benefiting significantly from the activities of the 3 licensed credit bureaus in Nigeria. So the era of lending in the dark has gone. There is no financial institution in Nigeria today that do not use the services of credit bureau through either for credit report or for credit scores or for portfolio monitoring and so many other products and services that are there. So I want to say that the culture has been embedded in the financial system and is enriching the availability of credit to Nigerians, especially to consumers and the micro, small, and medium enterprises in Nigeria.
But you know, the issue of data availability is like a common challenge in Nigeria, and even when the government tries to break into that or break that problem, we have different parts of the government taking data. So how do you now, as an association, in providing information for lenders, how do you get your data to ensure that, yes, the data that you're actually giving to these people, they are something that the banks or any of the financial organizations can work with and eventually be able to get back their money?
So the industry is a regulated industry. The bureaus are licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria. There is a CBN regulations that govern the operations of credit bureaus relating to how data will be sourced and how data will be made available to financial institutions. And of course, in 2017, the federal government of Nigeria, incredibly, very, very proactively passed the Credit Reporting Act of 2017. And that also has made it mandatory for financial institutions to furnish data to the credit bureaus, to the licensed credit bureaus. So it's by law that financial institutions will have to furnish data about, borrowers to the 3 licensed credit bureaus in Nigeria. And there's a format for presenting this information from time to time. There's a data template, which, gives information around 3 categories. First is about the demography of the subject matter or the firmography. If it's a company, talks about your name, your date of birth, your address, and all of that are there. And then, of course, there will then be credit information, which talks about the kind of loans you have taken, what are the terms and the conditions, what has been the payment behavior, and all of that. And then there are other issues, other information that are contained in that are furnished to the credit bureaus by law, including address information, return check information, mitigations, guarantors information, and all of those information are, reviewed and they are validated from time to time. And so it's important that financial institutions submit reliable, credible, accurate information, because if you don't do that, the data subject whose information you are submitting may take you to court, may take you on, and it also may lead to wrong, assessment of a borrower if the wrong information is passed on to the credit bureau. And that's why it's very important that what comes to the bureau are credible information. And this has been supported by the advent of National Identity Card, BVN. All of that have assisted. So the issue of identification have assisted the bureaus in being able to bring together what we can call credible information that you can learn with trust, with confidence, based on this information.
All right, but what about data protection for individuals? Is our data safe?
Yes, so I can confirm to you that the data is safe. Bureaus operate in line with global practices. Nigeria has adopted the global practices on data security and data furnishing. So we follow this seriously, because Nigeria has domesticated that global practice in Nigeria. And so you cannot give, for instance, while banks and other financial institutions or creditors generally can really bring and furnish the information about borrowers to the credit bureau, they cannot access those information without the consent of the borrowers or whoever they want to access. So there's always that consent which has to be given either by the individuals or by the companies before the furnishers of information can really access those information and use them. And that's the best practice. That's the global practice that we are following in Nigeria. So we're not doing anything that's different from what you see in other parts of the world.
Okay, so we don't just get a strange call or get some messages that we cannot trace. But anyway, for this year, your association said that it will focus on MSME, and you noted that 4% of MSMEs have access to credit. What are the major findings from your assessment of the MSMEs when it comes to credit reporting, and what are the major hurdles to their access to credit?
Okay, so before now, our association has focused on empowering the financial institutions and suppliers of data to get them aware of the importance of credit reporting. We've helped to develop capacities together with the Central Bank of Nigeria and the IFC, a member of the World Bank Group. And so everybody in that space has embraced credit reporting, and they're using it. Now, the major beneficiaries of credit bureau infrastructure in any economy are the consumers and the small businesses. And that's why now we have to focus on MSMEs. As you have rightly pointed out, accessing credit by MSMEs has always been a challenge among all other challenges that they face in Nigeria. And the reason is very simple. Banks want to know more about them. And so they didn't have the kind of information that will enable them to lend to them with confidence. And this is what the bureaus are bringing to the table. With the availability of credit bureaus, a bank can easily know whether an SME is enjoying a credit somewhere else and what has been the performance of that, of those, credits that such MSMEs have been enjoying. And if they have not been enjoying, they will know that they have not been enjoying any form of credit. So what we are focusing on now is how to, stimulate MSMEs to be able to see what they can do to improve their own governance, improve their own ways of keeping records, financial records, have structured around their transactions, and make sure that all transactions pass through the banking system, have financial records, have people who help them keep those records, and make sure that even those that are enjoying credit are paying back in line with the terms and conditions of such credit. So this is what the association is focusing on now, to engage the MSMEs through the BMOs. Most of them belong to various associations. And so we started, holding some level of webinars, and awareness creation platforms have been created by the Credit Bureau Association of Nigeria to help them to really be able to, focus on how they can have access to credit, to also help them to see where are the credits, where can they get what. And so these are just part of the challenge, part of the activities that CBN is focusing on for the rest of this year.
Okay, but how do you get the MSMEs, before, getting the info and, accessing rural areas? How do you, go about this?
Okay, so because we have, most MSMEs belong to associations, like I said, so we go through the business management organizations called the, associations and group of, they are always operating groups and associations. And so we hold sessions with this and do try to develop their capacity on the best way they can present themselves to banks and to other financial institutions. Secondly, is that, because we work with all financial institutions in Nigeria, including all the microfinance banks, all the commercial banks, investment banks, mortgage banks, all institutions, we work with them. We even work with telcos, discos, and all other, organizations that have anything to do with, providing services on credit. And so we use these other organizations to reach to their customers and help to really propagate the culture of responsible borrowing.
All right, and so the pandemic actually changed a whole lot of things, not just in Nigeria, globally. How did that affect how you get your information and both the debtors and lenders handling of your information and accessing credit?
Okay, so luckily, the credit reporting is, powered by technology. So data is submitted to the bureaus through, web-enabled devices or through APIs and so on and so forth. So what we did is that initially when the pandemic started, a lot of financial institutions, closed because we were asked to close and people were working from home. But I think within 1 or 2 months, we developed some level of, tools through what we call application, program interfaces called APIs. So through APIs, then financial institutions can submit their data to us, seamlessly without any form of challenges. So it enables us to have a link with all the financial institutions so they can submit data to us. They can also be able to access the data from our platform through that. So there's no physical involvement of anyone, and there's no manual intervention at this stage for you to get the data or for you to submit data to the credit bureaus. That's what we adopted. And we also encourage the lenders to make sure that they do engage their customers, because a lot of them has challenges during this pandemic. Some of them had their businesses because there was some level of lockdown. They were not unable to repay as agreed. So, and central bank also did a lot in engaging financial institutions to have some level of forbearance for institutions or customers or commercial entities that have problem during this time. So what we did is to encourage the financial institutions to make sure that they do engage their customers, and so they can restructure some of these loans, they can reduce interest rate on some of these loans, and they can repackage some of these loans so that it will not affect the ability of borrowers to be able to get credit in the future. If they do not do that, the challenge is that if those loans were not paid as at when due, it will affect their credit, the credit reports that will be pulled on them, and also it will then affect their credit scores, because the credit score will come down, and that will affect their ability to really get loans or credit in the future. But if they do repackage those facilities based on circumstances that we find ourselves, and not that someone was deliberately not trying to prepay loans, then it will help. And then such data is resubmitted to the bureaus, and then that then will not adversely affect the ability of especially MSMEs and consumers to have access to credit now and in the future.
All right, Mr. Kukwola, thank you so much for your time on Business Morning. Mr. Tunde Kukwola is the chairman, Credit Bureau Association of Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's see what happened in market last week. Now, Anyete, how's it going?
Yes, good morning, Ladi. For the markets, it's kind of mostly a positive picture, especially when you look at 4 markets across board: the FX market, the fixed income market, the equities market, as well as the unlisted securities market, what you call the smaller stock market. But now let me bring you up to speed with what happened as at Friday last week. Total transactions at the Forex market, according to FMDQ's trading exchange, we were mostly positive across board. FX spots, forwards, futures, FX derivatives, all were positive, except that the futures, there was no activity there. But the total turnover of transactions was up by 76.08%. Of course, that means that there was an increase in the volume of transactions there. But now, when you take a look at the value of the transactions, it was higher, but the Naira was down marginally at the NAFEX, where it went down by just a blip, 0.01%. Then at the BDC rate, the Naira was slammed there more than 0.5%, 0.54% is what it fell to 518 Naira 60 kobo against 515 Naira 80 kobo, which it did in the week before. Now, when we look at the fixed income market, for the bonds market, it was a bullish momentum there across board. Total number of deals there was 72, and the highest there were the 18th of July 2034 as well as the 18th of July 2034, which had more of an activity there. Now, when we look at the Nigerian Treasury bills market, number of deals there, 27. The highest there was the 9th of June, 2022, which had 8 deals worth about 5 billion naira. Of course, that just shows you that, yes, this comes just at the same time when we had Nigeria's GDP figures, which show that we did better than the previous quarter. Year on year, we're up by 5.01%. Then, of course, there was a primary market auction conducted by the central bank last week. So, of course, we at the Treasury, at the open market operations, number of deals there was 10, and the highest there were the 8th of March 2022, as well as 18th of January 2022. Both of them had 2 deals. Now, to tell us more, give us more information about how the market was, and then, of course, an outlook into what to expect, because tomorrow will be the last trading day for this week, and then, of course, we'll be entering a new month, and, of course, Wednesday, so to give us more information about that, let's talk to Senator Audu, who is a fixed income trader at Access Bank. Thank you for joining us, Senator.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So, Senator, now we had, Okay, so just tell us what happened at the market, and as well as what you think that the market, what direction the market will take, especially when we're coming from, the second quarter GDP result, as well as the open market operations conducted last week by the central bank.
Okay, so as you rightly stated, so last week in the fixed income market, the treasury bills market specifically, there were 2 auctions conducted. There was the NTB auction conducted on Wednesday, and the OMO auction conducted on Thursday. At the NTB auction conducted by the Debt Management Office, there was about 157 billion on offer. The subscription on that was about 394 billion, and the DMO sold 307 billion. We saw rates on the 91 and 182 day maintained at 2.5 and 3.5% respectively, while we saw a 55 basis point drop on the 364 day bill from 7.35% to 6.8%. Right, so the very next day, the CBN conducted the OMO auction. This was interesting because we hadn't seen an OMO auction conducted in about 5 weeks, and the CBN conducted one on Thursday. A total of 60 billion was offered. The subscription was about 152 billion, but the CBN stuck to their guns and sold exactly what was offered, 60 billion. Stop rates were maintained from the last time the auction was conducted at 7%, 8.5%, and 10.1% across the 3 bills offered. That was the 89, 157, and 355 day maturities. So what we saw closing the week after these auctions was that we saw winners at the auction try to exit at profitable levels, and we saw people who weren't successful at these auctions try to pick up these bills at attractive levels. So as you rightly mentioned, the GDP figures came out last week. We saw these figures coming at over 5.01%, which is quite significant, and it's a kind of a positive sign for the market. So we expect the positive sentiment, we expect mixed interest this week, but we expect that interest to be largely skewed towards the bullish side. So we expect the buyers to come alive this week.
Okay, so now when you look at the Treasury bills market, the T-bills, the yields on the T-bills, do you expect it to, climb higher this week, given the expected tight liquidity in the financial markets?
So we expect rates to remain relatively stable. So we've seen these rates trend downwards in weeks since the home auction was last conducted. But for last week, as I said, it was the home auction. So we expect rates to remain stable at about 6.87% levels, at least in the near term. So what will determine the trajectory or the direction going forward would be what happens this week. So there's an home auction conducted, and the subscription to those auctions will sort of determine the direction that we're going interest rate-wise.
Okay, so thank you for that piece of information. Quite a lot to look out for this week at the fixed income market. Thank you. So that was Senator Audu, a fixed income trader at Access Bank, just speaking to us. So now let's move over. For the central bank special bills, no activity there. That's all at the fixed income market. But let's flip over to this Nigerian equities market. It was not too, well, of course, there was some kind of like a switch in between the bear and the bull, but eventually it was a flattish but positive week. We gained 1.4 billion naira in value, and then of course the percentage increase on the all share index was just 0.01%, and the market cap is still at 20.5 trillion naira. So we will be looking out for whether the market will be able to sustain, or whether, because of course we had some market results, earnings results. Some, the likes of Zenith Bank, the likes of Guinness came, and then of course they were very, very impressive. So of course that's what's made for the banking counter, which gained 0.3%, especially because Zenith Bank's numbers came in, the half-year results were quite impressive. So we will be looking out for how the market would pan out, in the release of, as they expect more earnings, second quarter, as well as half-year earnings reports to trickle in. But of course, other sectors were in the red, so we had just 2 ups and 3 downs. Now, the value was down, volume and deals were up. Then, of course, for the unlisted securities market was fairly positive. So we'll be looking out for how all of these markets will turn out at the end of today's trading and the beginning of the week.
All right, Yete, thank you for that update. Let's hope the bull can, prevail this week somehow. Thank you so much. All right, we'll take another quick break. When we come back, we'll do an opening call to London. Do stay with us. This is Business Morning.
Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television. And now it's a bank holiday in London, but we still have Juliana joining us to give us updates from the UK. Hello, Juliana. Good morning.
Good morning, Eddie.
Good morning. So there's a new law that is supposed to make school uniforms cheaper, and in England and Wales. Who are those entitled to this cheaper uniform, and how does it work, really?
Well, hopefully everybody, and this is a really timely piece of legislation that has been put forward by a Labour MP called Mike Amesbury, and it's because, according to the Children's Society, they found out that for parents it can cost up to £320 per child when you're taking them back to school. Now, I know naira, pound fluctuate all the time, but according to my calculations, that's about 215,000 naira. And, we're talking about blazers, jumpers, PE kits, socks. And it's really a huge issue, especially for parents that can't afford it. It's been a tumultuous year. I know some people may not believe this, but there are hundreds of thousands of children up and down the United Kingdom living in poverty. And it's become a huge issue for parents providing for these children to come back to school. So the affordable uniform legislation will hopefully be signed into law by the next school year, which is next September. And what that will mean is that schools will not just automatically be able to sign contracts with local uniform providers, which will mean that basically you're buying uniforms that have logos printed everywhere. There will be a legal amount of logos that can be printed on a uniform, so parents can go to local supermarkets and other places to buy their uniforms. I've got 3 going back to school this week, and I can tell you it.
Yeah, I knew you were going to bring that home, Juliana. Well, there are also changes to the travel list. What's the update in that?
It is, yes, it is travel list. I had loads of calls, actually, everybody asking, is Nigeria on the red list? No, Nigeria isn't on the red list. So I know a lot of people were worried. Infection rates are rising within the country. So I know it was definitely, a prospective member, but it remains on the amber list. But yes, it is a controversial travel list here in the UK. It changes every 3 weeks. It's a traffic watch list. So we've got green, amber and red. If you are unfortunate to be on the red list, then of course, if you travel to a destination like South Africa, like the Democratic Republic of Congo or Brazil, and you're coming back into the UK, not only do you have to isolate for 10 days, you have to do that at a cost of over £2,000. So that's very worrying. Thailand over the weekend was placed on that list. There are new countries on the green list, Canada, Switzerland, Finland, Denmark. So even if you're not fully vaccinated and you've been to those countries on the way back to the UK, you're free from quarantine. Now, the vast majority of countries, particularly top holiday hotspots for British holidaymakers, are on the amber list. But you can only escape quarantine if you are fully vaccinated. So it's still very, very complicated. But alas, the green list is getting fuller and fuller by the day. But of course, there are still some countries not happy, the likes of Turkey, still remaining on the red list when, they really do rely on British tourists, Sini.
Yeah, well, Nigeria still also has to wait, and I hope not for too long. Well, thank you so much, Juliana, and do enjoy your bank holiday, even though we'll still have you at 1:30 later on today. So let's move over to the crypto space now. Bitcoin did very well over the weekend, I think. It's still raging, I hope. Ladi?
Yeah, it's still ranging, but, that's a given chance for a couple of altcoins to actually shine, over the weekend, given about double-digit gains. Look at the market cap. It is still above the 2 trillion mark. It's down about 0.86%. 24-hour volume traded in the total crypto market, $96.66 billion. It's down about 0.81%. Bitcoin dominance still staying at around the 40% range at this point. Price of Bitcoin this morning, 47,968. It has been ranging between 47,000 and 49,000. So some traders are swinging that trade there. It's down about 0.77%. 24-hour volume, $27.13 billion traded in Bitcoin at 8 a.m. This morning. Price of Ethereum, $3,167. Still finding it hard to cross that resistance of $3,300. It's down about 0.81% this morning. 24-hour volume, $12.87 billion traded in Ethereum. I looked at top outs by market cap. We have BNB down below the $500 mark. It's trading at $477, down about 1.30%. Cardano still trying to break that $3 mark there. It's trading now at $2.83. It's up about 1.55%. And Dogecoin still stuck in that 20-cent range. 28 cents this morning. It's now about 66 basis points. XRP has been quiet for a while now, but they still have that SEC issue in America there. It's down about 0.30%. Let's bring in Olumide Adesina now. Hello, Olumide. Good morning.
Hello, Ladi. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to have. So, countdown to the launch of the e-Naira, and CBN has launched some guidelines for banks. Going forward. What do these guidelines look like?
First of all, I think listeners understand that the e-Naira has much similarities with crypto assets. It's just that it operates on a centralized manner, and the concept of the INA basically is for transaction at a much cheaper and effective way. So just recently, the CBN released guidelines to Nigerian banks on how the procedures will be carried out. So let me highlight the key metrics. The CBN affirmed that there will be no transaction cost between merchants and its wallets to users. And then non-account holders can also, non-bank holders can also have access to that wallet. But the maximum transaction they can is 50,000 a day. And I think what they're trying to do is that they want to make the financial inclusion, and that's really a very good one, considering that that's the first pilot program in West Africa. Also, you need to understand that the Apex Bank had affirmed the fact that the ledger will work on the Hyperledger blockchain, and that's one of the strongest and centralized blockchain we have in the industry. It's operated by the Linux Foundation and has stakeholders like IBM. Then one more thing is that some users have complained about the fact that their information might be stored on the ledger, but the CBN in his detailed presentation outlined the fact that no personal information will be on the ledger. So I think it looks exciting, but it looks good on paper, but the adoption might be
okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we've seen Ethereum, struggle to break that 3,300 resistance. What do you think is going to happen?
Yes. Ethereum right now is suffering from the fact that we're seeing exhaustion around the $3,300 mark, and that's why it's unable to crack that position. But you need to understand that the NFT market is gaining momentum at record pace, and it's unlikely for Bitcoin to break below 3,000 this week. Although the weakening dollar, we expected that the downsides would have strengthened, But what we are seeing now is that the upsides are becoming more like damping, because there's no really strong market indicator that really push the market right now. So it's probably that we see the market ranging in the next 1 week at that position. But if it goes below 3,000, then I think the bulls might see record sell-offs.
Okay. All right. Olumide, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
All right. So top 5 gainers, we have Remain there up about 54%, Phantom 67 cents up 34%, and Perp at 19.97 there up about 15%. So Ini, get your e-Naira wallets ready. It's countdown time.
Well, it's a good thing that the CBN has started preparing us for the 1st of October. It's going to be a beautiful way to celebrate this year's anniversary or independence,
Exactly.
So I am looking forward to it. And as you said, my wallet is ready, actually. All right, well, that's it on the program. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Ini John Mekwadu. Remember to join us at 1:30 during Business Incorporated, where we'll have more development from the world of business.
And I'm Ladi Williams. Thank you for watching.